Ladies and gents, welcome to today's unboxing. I'm super excited about this package because I think there's an iPad first gen inside here. Even better, I think this one might be running iPhone OS 3.2. Now, let's get this thing opened up, see what kind of condition it's in, and I really hope we've got iOS 3.2 because I've got some interesting comments about this specific device on that version of iOS. Let's hope for the best and let's get this thing opened up. All right, here is our iPad. Definitely a first gen. Let's flip around to the back there. This is a 16 gigabyte Wi-Fi only model. We're going to set that right there because we also got 30-pin USB cable. Pretty dirty, but not really worried about that. There's no shortage of 30-pin cables, especially not around here. Now, this is our iPad, and I really hope this is running iOS 3 because these are impossible to find. Let's see if this thing has any power, and it does. Let me give this a little bit of a clean before we make it to the lock screen. Okay, here is our iPad, and it looks like it is in beautiful condition. Screen is a little bit dusty there, but certainly no cracks. I'm not really seeing any scratches, and the outside of this device looks very clean as well. No dents on the corners, and the back is free from any scratches. And yeah, it looks like a basically flawless device. So let's see what we have. Here is our lock screen, and this is the stock wallpaper that the iPad's first gen had when it launched with iOS 3. So let's go ahead and slide to unlock. And okay, so this is interesting. We do have the iPod icon, so that means we're running iOS 4 at the latest because in iOS 5, Apple changed this to say music. And I just instinctively double tapped the home button because I wanted to change the brightness, but nothing happens. So that means this has to be iOS 3. What happens if we swipe over here? The only thing that would ruin this is if on this next page, there's a Game Center application because that was introduced in iOS 4. So moment of truth, and it's just the iBooks application. I realized you guys couldn't see that. Let me tilt the camera. So I think that means we've got iOS 3. Let's head into settings, and I think we did it. Let me go ahead and turn up that brightness for you guys. General and the actual moment of truth. Here we go. iOS 3.2.2. I finally did it. I finally pulled an iPad first gen running iOS 3. You guys have no idea. Well, actually, you probably do, because if you're watching my channel, you have an interest in old, rare Apple stuff. These are the hardest legacy iOS device to find on their original firmware. And I genuinely don't know why. So, time for a rant. Let's talk about this. The iPad first generation, as you guys probably know, launched in 2010, early 2010. That means iOS 4 had not been released yet. Obviously, this iPad shipped with iOS 3. Now, iOS 3 and iOS 4 do not have over-the-air updates. That means if you wanted to update this iPad, you had to plug it into iTunes. For 2 years in a row, you had to do that. Then iOS 5 comes out, introduces over-the-air updates, and all of a sudden, yes, you can update this iPad through the settings app on the device. But iOS 5 is where this thing ends support. So it's not like this thing had much time to be updated. Granted, it only got 2 major iOS updates, 4 and 5, but one of those didn't support over-the-air updates. So I don't understand why it is that it is so hard to find an original iPad running iOS 3. Logic should tell you that this device should be pretty easy to find, the same way it's somewhat easy to find a first and second gen iPod Touch running iOS 1 and 2 and an iPad 2 running iOS 4. because those devices had to be plugged in before you could update the software. You couldn't just go into settings and update them. So why is it that the first gen iPad is next to impossible to find on iOS 3? I have no idea, and I would love to hear your all's thoughts down in the comments, because this iPad sold pretty well. This was the first tablet in the world, essentially, and the iPad was fantastic. Steve Jobs stood up on the stage and introduced this beautiful device.
And we'd like to show it to you today for the first time. And we call it the iPad. Let me show it to you now. This is what it looks like. I happen to have one right here. That's what it looks like. Very thin. It's just like this.
Granted, it's pretty underpowered, but the build quality is one of the best iPads ever. This device feels incredible. So enough of my rant. Please leave me some discussion down below. Why is this device so hard to find? It just does not make sense to me. I would love some new theory that I haven't thought of before about this device, but I just cannot figure it out. So let's talk about iOS 3. That version of iOS launched with the 3GS in late 2009. The iPad first gen came out in early 2010, and that was before the iOS 4 update was released. So that meant they had to release iOS 3.2, which was specific for this iPad, because even the iPhones didn't get 3.2. They only got 3.1.3. So this iPad comes out, and it introduces Apple's first attempt at their own processor. This iPad has the Apple A4 chip inside of it. And let's see if I can show you a picture. So here is the A4 chip, and this was a 1 gigahertz single core processor. And in the case of the iPad first gen and the iPod Touch fourth gen, it had 256 megabytes of RAM. So performance was not very good. This chip was capable of running the user interface here on the iPad, but not much else. It was pretty underpowered, especially in the graphics department. So playing games or any demanding applications on this device was not a great experience. However, this iPad was really good at emails, music, Safari, photos, all the basic stuff that you would need with an iPad. And that's what this device excelled at. It really wasn't until the iPad 2nd, 3rd, and 4th gen came out that the device was really tailored towards being able to play games. This was more of a utility device. This thing was meant to, in a way, substitute a laptop, because at the time, 2009, 2010, laptops really weren't meant for gaming. You had to get a dedicated gaming laptop to do that with. Laptops were for work or school. That's what this device was for. We do have the YouTube app, which I'm sure is not going to load. I already tried the App Store, and that does not load either. The YouTube application, at least the one that was built in, was removed in iOS 6 with some issues with Apple and Google. But what I want to do, I'm going to reset the home screen layout. Boom. Just like that. So this is how the iPad looked when it shipped with iOS 3. So if you're trying to find one of these on eBay and you see a listing that looks like this, get it, because that means this thing has iOS 3.2. These are some applications that were added later, but this is all you got on the iPad first gen when it launched. Now, I've been waiting for this day for a long time, because the iOS 3.2 wallpapers on the iPad are very special. For some reason, there are some exclusive ones that were only available on the iPad first gen and also only available on iOS 3.2. So let me show them to you guys. Of course, we've got the original stock wallpaper here that we know and love. I think this has actually made a comeback on the new versions of iPadOS. But then we have this beauty here. This is kind of like a desert oasis. And maybe I'll do landscape mode to kind of fill the lens here. It looks pretty nice. Next up, we've got this one here. Also looks like some sort of a desert. And then we also have this one. I think this is available on other devices, but I don't think this is here. This looks like the Northern Lights. Pretty simple wallpaper. We've also got like a chalkboard and maybe some granite or stone. Then we have some fabric. And then this one, also some sort of fabric. And this one here is just kind of a black repeating pattern. Then, I don't know if this is going to show up, but this is interesting. This is obviously the stock iOS 4 wallpaper, but it was introduced and available here in iOS 3. But the resolution is really bad. I don't know. So if you guys look here, look at this text. You can read it. It's pretty clear. But then if you look at the bubbles, they're like grainy and blurry. I hope that shows up on camera, but it's obvious here with the naked eye. This wallpaper was not ready for the iPad. This is definitely not an HD version of that wallpaper like all of the other pictures on here are. Pretty interesting. Of course, we've got the globe. This is a classic. This one's really nice. And we've got the wave. The wave's always been blurry. Apple never fixed that. I don't know what the deal with that is. And we've got this beautiful flower. So I think we got to go with this super unique wallpaper. As far as I know, only available on the iPad 1st Gen running iOS 3. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this look at an unboxing of what is, in my opinion and experience, the hardest to find legacy iOS device on its original version. I have found literally everything else from iOS 1 up to iOS 11, but this is by far the most difficult to find. This device is beautiful. It's in great condition, despite being a 16 gigabyte Wi-Fi only model. That's okay because this bad boy has never been updated. iOS 3.2.2 on this device. All right, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have. Super cool device. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I look forward to seeing you in another one of my videos.